always at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Gonna get to talk about the 49ers' newest addition, Mykel Williams. And the 49ers selected Mykel Williams with the 11th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. And of course, I was live with John Chapman over on his channel, and we were discussing it as it happened. But I thought it was important before I head off to the draft party, before I get into day two, to talk about Mykel Williams and what exactly the 49ers are looking for. I got my full breakdown of Mykel Williams and what he's going to provide this football team, what his strengths, what his weaknesses are, and why the 49ers felt convicted, because they did feel convicted on Mykel Williams. This wasn't as simple as we're going to sit there at 11 and wait for somebody to fall, and hopefully it's the guy we want. No, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch knew they wanted Mykel Williams. How much so? Enough that they were willing to go up and get him. If you're willing to trade up to get a player, you love that guy. You got to make sure you have him. You're willing to give up other draft capital to go get a player like Mykel Williams. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that makes sense. But it also means that maybe 11 was a little bit more sure for the 49ers than it was for most. A lot of people have been talking about all the different prospects, I have included, is who was going to be that guy that made sense for them. And of course, coming down the stretch, I think that, I know I thought that they were going to go with Mykel Williams, and I think that there was a consensus with a lot of people that started seeing Mykel Williams as the player the 49ers were going to select when you saw the skill set that he provided that matched with what the team looks for an edge defender. And he's a fun player. He's a lot of athleticism. He's a guy that sets the edge really well against the run, and he's only 20 years old. So I think they had a fear that the New Orleans Saints were going to go with Mykel Williams. That was kind of the build recently. Luckily for the 49ers, they did decide to go with Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle from Texas, who would have been another fit for the 49ers in the first round. But I think we all knew they needed to start rebuilding this defensive line, and it starts with a defensive end from Georgia. And one thing that we got to make it perfectly clear before we get into the breakdown is it is hard to project Mykel Williams exactly how he's going to look in the 49ers wide nine, because you just don't see it very much on his Georgia film. You see a lot of him playing 4-eye and 5 tech, which is more inside. That's playing on the tackle. And so with the wide nine, he's going to be a lot further out. He's going to have to use his athleticism. What kind of get off does he have? Those are going to be the things that are going to be interesting. But the 49ers do have a canvas that they can work on. A guy that played a lot of games in the SEC, who's long, who's got athletic ability. This was a fun pick. And, this is the opposite of, some of the other guys who have a ton of production. He doesn't have a ton of production, but he's not exactly unproductive like Shamar Stewart. So Mykel Williams is the pick. I'm looking forward to getting into this breakdown. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on an audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. If you are going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the home stretch for NBA and NHL playoffs. Bet Online has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With a large selection of odds on everything from Major League Baseball, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head on over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. And the 49ers are going to have some key picks today. They're going to be picking 43. There's always the chance they could trade up, trade back. There's a lot of good players on the board. We can kind of talk about that a little bit, what they probably look for at pick 43. Also 75 and 100. So it's going to be a fun day. But Mykel Williams gets it started and really puts the direction of the draft in a certain light. Going edge early means you don't have to worry about not getting an edge in the first 3 rounds. That would have made it difficult for you to be able to get a starter. After that, it gets a little bit more troublesome, finding that guy that has all the elements you need to be a starter. Defensive tackle, you can find those guys into the 4th round, maybe even the 5th round, depending on how things work out. With other positions, linebacker, cornerback, you can find guys later that can contribute as starters. Defensive end was a little bit more difficult, and the 49ers decided that they needed to go round 1. And Mykel Williams is 6'5", 265 pounds. When you're talking prototypical height and weight, that's what you're getting from Mykel Williams. Now, he ran a 4.7 740, which I think a lot of people were hoping was going to be faster. They were hoping that they were going to get a more athletic edge defender that would have been able to bring pressure off. I don't think that they were expecting this guy to go blow you away with the 4.5, but something in the 4.6s that would have been a little bit more attractive when you're talking about an athlete. But he still has enough athleticism. You can see the way he moves, changes direction, and I think that's something that's going to be important. And I talked about this a little bit last night, but John Lynch went into it a little bit in his press conference as well, is the versatility. Because he played 4-eye and 5-tech, there's the versatility for him to go in and play the 3-tech when they're in obvious pass situations, the old Arden Key role, right, the Charles Omenihu role, and be able to rush the passer from inside. He's too quick for offensive guards. The lateral quickness is going to give them problems, but has sufficient power because he played that 4-eye 5-tech to be able to hold up against the run, even on the inside. 3rd and 4, you could still move him in there and expect he can hold up against the run because he did it so much in college. This is very much so what Eric Armstead and what DeForest Buckner were. They played 5-tech for Oregon before they were drafted by the 49ers. Now, they were drafted for a different regime, and that regime in San Francisco ran a 3-4. That's why it made a lot of sense. But since the 49ers have had such success with those kinds of players, it makes sense that they would add a guy that can do that. So expect Mykel Williams to rush from the outside. Expect him to rush from the inside. And I think that you're going to get a dual threat with a lot of versatility. And that's what you're getting now from him and Yetur Gross-Matos. That's why they brought Gross-Matos to San Francisco for that Arden Key role. So you have 2 guys that can potentially do that now. And so now when you get into those 3rd downs, you can pull those defensive tackles off the field. And right now, besides Kevin Givens, they don't have a legit pass rushing defensive tackle. And we all know Kevin Givens isn't an elite guy, but he's the best 3-tech right now rushing the passer. Pretty much everybody else is more 2-down players. So having that versatility at edge, I think, was important. The 49ers get it. Now, Mykel Williams wasn't overly productive at Georgia. He did have 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 21 tackles, with 15 of those being solo tackles. Now, he was playing with a sprained ankle all season, which is something to take into consideration. But also, the year before, he had 5 sacks. In 2022, he had 5 sacks. So this is a guy that's been consistently at a 5-sack margin. Can you increase his production is going to be one of the keys. And I think the 49ers feel they can, especially when they get him into a less controlled system. So in Georgia, his job playing 4-eye and 5-tech was to hold the ground and make sure that you didn't get pushed back, and pass rush was secondary. There's restraints on him. That was one of the key things when the 49ers went and got Arden Key, is he got to come into a system with the 49ers that was attack, freedom, not so much hold your ground, but it was get in there, penetrate, make plays. And that's what you're going to get from Mykel Williams now. Now that he moves outside, he's going to have the ability to just go. And that should help him get off the ball quicker. That should be able to use his speed a little bit more and kind of play into his aggressiveness. So they're taking the training wheels off. And some schemes, that's not how it works, but it does in San Francisco. And they're hoping it's going to pay huge dividends with his ability to be able to get after the quarterback. The arm length is fantastic. 34 3/8 arms. You think long arms, right? You think about Aldon Smith and guys like that play off the edge, and that's not a terrible comparison when you're talking about arm length. You're going to see it from Mykel Williams. This is a guy that has the ability to get separation from offensive tackles. He can get there to their chest plate before they get to him, and that's one of the keys. Controlling the chest plate, you control the pass rush. Also, he's got to get a little bit better with handwork, but he's pretty good already. So you're going to get a technical side to Mykel Williams that I think the 49ers can build upon, a foundation that he's going to be able to use some of his moves to be able to get into the backfield. Now, the pass rush plan is going to have to get better, but the good news is he has Chris Kasarik, and he also has Nick Bosa. And Nick Bosa has one of the best pass rush plans in the way that he attacks offensive tackles in the NFL. So he can share some of that knowledge with a guy like Mykel Williams, and he can grow. A guy like Yetur Gross-Matos can also, kind of instill some wisdom on the young guy and see what they can do. But he has the necessary tools to be able to instill that game plan. So we can tell him, hey, use these techniques, and he could get better at it. And it's not like he's devoid of pass rush techniques. He does have them. So I think the 49ers are very excited about his skill set. Big hands, long arms, wingspan, 82 and 5/8. Very, very good. He was excellent against the run. That's where he's going to make his bacon. 92% run grade. Phenomenal. So you're getting a guy that's going to set the edge consistently for the 49ers. And that has been one of the concerns over the last 2 years is the run defense. And a lot of it was on the edge, right? Chase Young wasn't doing so good. Cleveland Farrell was pretty good at it, but Chase Young struggled. So you got the upside with the pass rush. You struggle with the run. This last year, Leonard Floyd really struggled to stop the run. Gross-Matos was inconsistent. Okawanu struggled to stop the run. So you needed a more consistent run stopper opposite of Bosa and try to keep everything more inside, not let teams be able to take advantage of you on the edge. And Mykel Williams is going to add to that. That was a great job for them. I think when you look at what he needs to do in the pass rush game, he needs to just get more consistent with his hands, be able to use the tools that he has. But also, I think the freedom and him playing outside should provide him extra space to use some of his lateral quickness that could create some problems for offensive tackles. But let's see how much pressure he can put off the edge. One of my question marks for him has been, how is he going to be able to bend the corner? And that's been one of my arguments the whole time. Is this guy going to bend? Because you don't see the hip flexibility. You don't see the ankle flexibility that help you bend and flatten out around offensive tackles. That's the elite pass rusher. And so I wonder where that's going to look. I'm hoping we're going to get a little bit more athleticism from him in a different type of position. But I think that's a big question mark to see how he really fits in this 49ers defense and how he's able to bring pressure. Now, John Lynch did bring up that Arden Key, Yetur Gross-Matos were also, Charles Omenihu were guys who were built in the similar manner, who were built more on power with adequate speed, but not exactly the bend. And they were successful in the 49ers system. So you kind of got a blueprint for what you're going to get. You're not going to get the bend at the elite level around the edge. But what you are going to get is a very strong player that can play with power, that can move inside and still have production when it comes to sacks. And I think that's exactly what they were looking at. Really fun player. So when you look at him, it's the power that comes off, that screams off the board when you're watching him on film. He controls blocks. He's got really good hands when it comes to violent hands in the run game. Like I said, they need to get a little bit better technically when it comes to the pass rush. But when it comes to the run game, he's one of the best of them. And he is able to shed and get off offensive linemen or tight ends pretty consistently and make tackles. I like what he does. It's one of my favorite things to watch. He plays with great leverage. He's able to play low. Some of these edge rushers play high. Shamar Stewart, I broke him down on Patreon. That was one of my complaints, was how high he played when he was coming to pass rush. There's no reason for it. Mykel Williams, you don't have that problem. He plays with low pad level, which is something that's going to make Chris Kasarik very happy. Because if you go to training camp, that's one thing they do. They GTFO and they stay low. That's just what they do, and you have to do it in San Francisco. The length, the heavy hands, the ability to shed blocks, those are all things that he does so high, right, so good. The versatility, he can play in multiple spots, 4-eye, 5-tech, 7-tech, 9-tech, wide 9. He can do it all. So the versatility's there. I would even say you could line him up over a center and do some line stunts with him, Gross-Matos, Bosa, Okawanu right now, right? You've got some versatility there with some of those guys. I think they could do a really good job being able to generate pressure. He also has a nasty bull rush and can get pushed. That could be good for collapsing the pocket. So that's one thing that he does really well. He converts speed to power, and we know that's one of the key traits to being a very effective pass rusher in the NFL. So he has a trait like that. It's not the elite speed, but it's good enough speed to threaten an offensive tackle, make them have to overset, and then be able to switch onto your power and get that push with that elite bull rush. So he does a good job. The lateral quickness is going to make him very difficult for interior offensive line to be able to handle. And so I think that that's what I like. Now, the counter moves, he has counter moves in his repertoire for pass rush. I would just like to see them get a little bit better, a little bit more refined. And I think having a second counter move, right? You have one. Where's the second one? When you start putting moves on moves together, that's when you're going to become an elite pass rusher. And that's one of the things when you look at some of the guys that are in this draft, there's some guys that are some real technicians, but they don't have the physical traits that Mykel Williams has. So it's a little bit of a projection of what he could be, but I think they really like what he can do. And then, I talked a little bit about the line games, but that's something that even John Lynch brought up in the presser last night, seeing him be able to run some of the games, some of the twists, some of the combos that they could run with a great combination of these athletic interior players. And he's got the necessary speed, athleticism to be able to do it consistently. I think when you're looking at the weaknesses, some of the things that he needs to get better at or that are concerns, the first thing has to be, at times, he doesn't have that GTFO matrix. Sometimes he's a little late off the ball. That was something you saw consistently. It was not always perfectly timed. But one thing that Chris Kacerek believes is that he can get that out of you. So he's going to make sure that he works on that all the time. And so you have a real advantage if you're an athlete like Mykel Williams. But if you're a tick late, that puts you in a situation where it evens out and an offensive lineman has an opportunity. So I think that he could get a little bit better when it comes to that. His pass rush arsenal needs to get better. We talked about that. He kind of right now relies on athleticism, relies on power. We need to get a better pass rush plan. We need to get more refined with our techniques. And then he just needs to get better with a bigger arsenal so he can attack different offensive tackles different ways, because they're going to study you in the NFL. So you got to make sure you do that. There's inconsistency with the hand placement. That is something he's going to have to do. He's going to have to get better at. He can struggle a little bit with his swim move, get it a little bit out of sorts, out of whack, and get it a little high, and he can get armpitted, and that's not a good thing. That's how you lose balance, and that's how you struggle a little bit. He's got to get better also reading offensive line movement. That's going to be one of the keys to seeing how good that Mykel Williams can get. But I think when the 49ers look at this selection, they feel very comfortable with the fact that they got a guy that has a high floor and still has a pretty high ceiling. Mykel Williams is not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. This dude has still got a lot of ability to be able to go out there and execute and do exactly what the 49ers are hoping that he's going to be able to execute. So, big fan of the selection. I think that early on in the process, I wasn't as high on this. Like I said, a lot of the stiffness really concerned me with the athleticism off the outside. But I think as we went through the process, you kind of start liking Mykel Williams a little bit more and a little bit more, especially when it comes to the way he sets the edge. And I just believe this was the way the 49ers were going to go, right? Your surefire player that can come in and make plays for your football team. Was surprised to hear they were willing to trade up for him. But hey, I like the fact that they were convicted on the player. Chris Kacerek, Robert Saleh, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, all of them, consensus. When you have consensus, it usually works out pretty well. So very hopeful that this is going to be one of those picks that works out very well for the 49ers. And now they turn their attention to day 2 at pick 43. And I think there's going to be some key players that are going to be available in those in that spot. You've got some players that have fallen. Mike Green has fallen because of, I'm sure, the red flags around his personal life. So that was a thing, right? We didn't know. Now it does appear that's a thing. Donovan Ezeraku, another edge rusher who, if you like Mike Green, you like Donovan Ezeraku, but that guy has 0 red flags. Long arms, right? Your only question mark is size, but he's still available. Now, those are edge rushers. You already went edge rush. So that would make it a little interesting. Will Johnson tumbled out of the first round, and he was mocked to the 49ers in so many mock drafts. Now, he's fallen. The question marks about the leg. I kind of talked about that the last week or so. That one would make me nervous with him not running. He never ran the 40 in this whole process because of the injuries. I think that's concerning because what is his top speed? Is he a 4.5 guy or is he a 4.6 guy? Is he a 4.4 guy? I think that made a lot of people nervous what the medical was. So question mark there. This is very rich with edge rushers. Nick Scorton also available, and I love Nick Scorton. I think he could have easily went in the end of round 1. You look at some positions the 49ers could target right here. You've got wide receiver Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State, who would be a legit X receiver, 6'4", over 214 pounds, ran a 4.47 40. He is the closest thing to Tet McMillan that is in this draft. So 49ers needed to go wide receiver. They could go there. You need to go cornerback. Trey Amos, still available. I think he's the number one cornerback for me that doesn't have concerns, because Will Johnson, of course, would be the number one cornerback on the board for pretty much all the teams, minus the medical. And some teams might have just ripped him off the board if the medical is that bad. So the best cornerback on the board right now could be Trey Amos. I had a first-round grade on him, and I did last year with Kamari Lassiter. I said, hey, I have a first-round grade on Kamari Lassiter. He's probably not going to go to the second round. That's what happened. Then he had 5 picks for the Houston Texans. That's kind of how I seen Trey Amos this year. Stuck by my guns, first-round grade. He's going to go in the second round, and somebody's going to get a legit player. So the 49ers could target cornerback. When you're looking at interior defensive line, there are some players still available. Now, Kenneth Grant, Tyleik Williams, one Tex, who the 49ers potentially could have been interested in, they're off the board. So the main players at defensive tackle, TJ Sanders, the 3 tech from South Carolina, Alfred Collins, the 1 tech from Texas. Then you've got Darius Alexander, right? The 3 tech, kind of more of a versatile interior defensive lineman from Toledo. And then a guy like Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee, who is a designated pass rusher early, but wins in pass rush rate at 20%. Of course, I mocked him to the 49ers in my final mock draft. But the guy that I think right now that I'm leaning towards, and he might go in the picks before the 49ers get to select, is Arianti Ursary, the offensive tackle from Minnesota. And there's going to be a lot of guys that potentially could go here in this range that are interior offensive linemen or offensive tackles that you could potentially really like in this situation. But I think Ursary fits the 49ers mold. He played the zone scheme. He fits the zone scheme. He had good film at left tackle against Abdul Carter last year. And I think when you're talking 6'6", 330 pounds, you can plug and play on the inside as an interior offensive lineman who could eventually play left tackle. And that's the key. I think he's got upside to play left tackle in the NFL. He's got the quickness. He's got the lateral quickness, the speed, the anchor. He's got pretty good handwork. He's a very solid offensive lineman. I think he could be available for the 49ers at 43. And we know that defensive tackle is the biggest need for the 49ers. But passing on a guy like this, to kind of maybe reach on TJ Sanders, I don't think 43 is a reach. But, I think if you're wanting to target TJ Sanders, you might want to trade back, 5-8 spots when you're talking positional value, be able to pick up an extra pick. But I think that Ursary is one of those guys. Another guy to kind of look at this area are 2 guys. If you want to go just straight guard, I think you got Tate Ratledge. Tate Ratledge would be a solid player for the 49ers in the interior, a guy that doesn't give up sacks, who played consistently at right guard at Georgia. Could he make the translation to left guard? Would they move Dominic Puni to left guard? I think that's a concern with Ratledge. Then another guy, Jonah Savahinaya out of Arizona. And I've said on the channel, I like Savahinaya. I think he would make sense for the 49ers. So a couple of options when it comes to each position available for the 49ers. It's weird that edge rush is still available. Maybe that's going to change. You have really good wide receivers, right? You got Higgins, you got Luther Burden III. Those guys are still available. Those guys are going to go off the board quickly. You have quarterback Shedeur Sanders. He's going to go off the board quickly. Will Johnson going to go off the board quickly. I think those things could push a really good player to the 49ers. And the question is going to be, do they value offensive line? There is an argument that the 49ers, if they didn't get Mykel Williams, may have turned their attention to offensive line in round 1. So it's interesting. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And the 49ers are going to get themselves 3 good players, hopefully. Maybe they'll get more. Maybe they'll trade up. We'll see what happens. But it's going to be a good day for the San Francisco 49ers. And it was a good day yesterday getting Mykel Williams. I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.